Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into something I find absolutely fascinating, the hidden psychological life cycle of rewarding our kids. I mean, if you've ever cheered your lungs out for an A+, or maybe offered up some ice cream for a stellar report card, you're really going to want to hear what we're breaking down today. Let's kick things off with a pretty provocative question. Does applauding your child's grades actually do more harm than good? Right off the bat, that sounds totally backward. We praise to build confidence, right? Well, as we're about to see, that well-intentioned applause might accidentally be setting a psychological trap. Part 1. The well-meaning reward. Look, it is completely natural. We instinctively reward children when they hit those highly visible milestones. We're talking about securing good grades on a tough exam or winning a local competition. It's the standard parenting playbook. You see a win, and you immediately want to recognize it. And obviously, in that exact moment, children feel incredible. They totally treasure the applause, the certificates, the whole shebang. They feel a deep sense of pride. But right beneath that surface-level joy, a quiet, psychological shift is taking place. Which brings us to part 2, the validation trap. Okay, so here is exactly how that trap is set. Step 1, the child secures good grades. Step 2, they get applauded. And step 3, this is the kicker, they eventually learn to require that external approval just to feel successful. They run through this sequence over and over until it's hardwired. Suddenly, the joy isn't in the learning itself. It's entirely dependent on getting that round of applause at the end. So, what does this actually mean? External validation becomes this deeply ingrained belief that unless others say so, unless they appreciate and approve, an act simply isn't considered an achievement. Think about how limiting that is. It morphs into a rigid internal rule. If you do something great, but nobody is there to clap for you, did it even matter? To a child stuck in this loop, the answer is a resounding no. And it doesn't stop there. Part 3, the generational cycle. This dynamic plays out over decades. You have a childhood conditioned by praise that naturally evolves into an adulthood spent seeking approval. And then comes parenthood, and guess what happens? These once praised kids instinctively replicate the exact same external reward system with their own children. It's basically a perfect copy-paste of the very system that trapped them. Now, here's where it gets really heavy, because this cycle takes a massive internal toll. By the time they become parents, they've already taught this flawed approach to their kids. Worse, they've likely suffered from your own lack of self-esteem along the way, carrying this persistent feeling of incompleteness. Because, well, if you spend your entire life waiting for someone else to validate your worth, you're bound to feel hollow on the inside. But then, something shifts. Usually much later in life, they hit a realization. True happiness actually lies within. They finally put the pieces together and realize genuine contentment has absolutely nothing to do with external achievements or shiny trophies. It's an incredible realization, but tragically, it almost always comes late in the game, way after the cycle has already been passed down. Which leads us to our final point, part 4, choosing a meaningful life. This leaves us standing at a pretty major crossroads. We have to choose between chasing external achievements or the pursuit of a genuinely meaningful life. If we want to break this generational loop, we have to consciously weigh our priorities. We literally need to shift away from that deep-seated reliance on the applause and instead prioritize internal meaning. We've got to teach ourselves and our kids to value our internal compass way more than the external scoreboard. Because understanding that a meaningful life outweighs external validation, that is the real key. That's what actually leads to lasting happiness and a true sense of fulfillment. When you can finally disconnect your self-worth from the opinions and applause of others, you unlock a self-sustaining fulfillment that nobody can ever take away from you. So, I'm going to leave you with this. What is your choice? And maybe more importantly, what do you want your children to choose? Take a second to think about the rewards you're giving, the applause you're seeking, and the cycle you might be perpetuating. Decide and act accordingly before it's too late. Thanks so much for joining me on today's Explainer, and I'll catch you next time.